The thoughts, views, opinions, and testimonials shared by the host and guests of this podcast are for faith promoting purposes only. Latter-day Stories does not represent the official position of The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. This interview was done a little over a year ago. Timeframes you hear are no longer accurate, and some things have been edited out to stay in sync with the Latter-day Story vision. Permission was received to still use the story, and I feel the story helps encapsulate the reason for the podcast. To share our personal stories and conversion, to bear testimony that the gospel is for all, gives us the ability to change and become better creatures through Christ. Enjoy. What's up, everyone? Our guest today, his name is Wusu. And I'm excited to have him on. So our families have grown up with each other from when we were younger. And typically I have an idea what people are going to talk about. But in this case, I decided that I didn't want to have that conversation with Wusu and wanted to see what he felt inspired to talk about and kind of just go with the flow from there. So I don't even know what is going to be brought up or what kind of conversation we'll have. But with that said, Wusu, thank you so much for joining me, brother. I appreciate it. So feel free to kind of introduce yourself and kind of get the ball rolling here.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, man. So like was mentioned, my name is Wusu. Grew up in Southern California. Went to school, graduated high school, and is in a school that was predominantly not an LDS school. There's only a handful of us out there, as it is just in Southern California. But yeah, graduated and then went on a mission to Argentina. I was in Mendoza, served from 2015 to 2017, and came back, went to BYU, met my wife in Utah. She wasn't going to BYU, but we lived in the same apartment complex. And then we got married. I got married. I'm one of those typical stories, got married within a year from being home on commission. And anyways, lived down there. We've got 3 little boys, 3, 2, and 8 months, and currently live in Idaho Falls. Work as a custom home builder out here. And I did go on a mission, but no, I was not raised in the church. My grandparents and my mom's family, they are all members and they have been for their whole lives, but that didn't trickle down to me. So I actually got baptized when I was 14. And then just since then, yeah, I've been a member ever since then.
Awesome. So before we kind of dive into things, something I've been asking people is, what is your favorite doctrine or principle found in the LDS faith?
Yeah. For me, I definitely would say it's the doctrine of eternal progression or becoming like God. I think, I think that's a huge emphasis and a baseline to a lot of what the church teaches, in that we have a Father in heaven who's perfect, and he created this earth for us and has given us an opportunity to come to earth, gain our experiences, utilize the atonement of Christ, and then ultimately, through his grace and through the atonement, become like him in the next life. And yeah, that's just so special to me, because it kind of puts things in perspective for me.
Yeah, that's awesome. I thought for a second you say eternal families, and then when you said eternal progression to be like God, I was like, oh, there we go. And I was like, awesome. No, yeah, that's a very unique doctrine in the LDS faith than any other
Yeah.
faith. And people hear that and they're like, oh my gosh, like you think you can be God? Like, no, I don't think I can be God. Like, no one's gonna be God. Like he is,
Yeah.
the God. But just like any parents, they want us to be able to grow up and experience what they did and um, become like them, or in our cases, like better than our parents.
Yeah.
And so yeah, that's a very unique doctrine that we believe in, but it does put a very unique perspective on our reason for being here in life.
Yeah.
Basically being a placement test, learn all this knowledge, placement test to know where we're gonna be in the next life, and who knows what's gonna happen after that.
Yeah.
Um,
Seriously.
so awesome. Well, with that said, I'm gonna let you take over and share whatever you feel inspired to share in regards to your life or what you've gone through or your, belief in the church, doctrine, things of that nature. But yeah, feel free to take over.
Awesome. Well, thanks, man. Feel free to interrupt me or jump in with any
We'll
questions.
do.
If I'm going the wrong way, you guide me back to the track.
You're good.
No, but really, a lot of what I was planning or thinking of saying goes off of that doctrine that we were just talking about of becoming like God. I think for me, if I could sum up my whole journey in the church, or I guess even pre-church, joining the church, and then, you know, enduring through the gospel in my own journey, is pay the price. That's the phrase I love. Pay the price. Is that before I was a member, life wasn't easy. When I became a member, life wasn't easy, and life still isn't easy. Um, and there are times when being a member of the church, being a follower of Christ is hard. Um, and of course, there's times when not being a follower of Christ is hard as well. But for me, it just boils down to that of paying the price. Like, if we're keeping things in perspective of becoming like God, there's certain things that need to be done. Certain experiences that need to be had, and
Hmm.
sacrifices that need to be made. And I have a sports background, and I mean, I'm no good sports person, but I like playing sports. Not the best athlete, but in sports, there's a price that you need to pay if you want to be the greatest.
Yep.
You got to put the time in, you got to put the practice in. And same thing with being a follower of Christ. Like, you've got to put the practice in, you have to put the time in, and there's certain sacrifices that need to be made. And I don't know, sacrifice, that's such a heavy word, which is
Hmm.
why I kind of like the phrase pay the price, because the price is different. It's different for everyone. It's different for different times of your life, different seasons that you live in. But I'm a firm believer of paying that price, whatever that price may be, has substantial reward for you, and helps myself, at least I can't speak for everyone, but helps myself become a better person, better husband, better father, and just a better person in general, in this life that we're living.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of my mission president. He always would say, pick your heart. He's a bigger gentleman, not just in regards to weight, but height as well.
Mm.
And he needed to lose weight and slim down because of his back and things of that nature. And he's like, man, it's so hard, but being fat is hard too, and so is losing weight. That's hard, and being healthy
Yeah,
is hard. And he's like, so what hard do you want to go through? Do you want to just be, fat and healthy the whole life, or do you want to lose the weight and be healthy? Either way, it's
yeah,
going to be hard. You just got to pick which hard you think is worth going through.
yeah, yeah. I know. I really like that, and honestly, that's the big challenge of life, is picking the hard you want to go through, because they're all going to come with hardness, with consequences,
Hmm.
and it's going to throw you for a loop, and you're really not going to know what's going to happen. But again, how I started with becoming like God, I think for us, having that unique belief, um, kind of puts things in perspective and helps when making those decisions, or looking at the historical facts of the church, or
Hmm.
um, the problems that have exist in our history and in our current situation.
Yeah.
We can decide to choose the heart of focusing on those things, or rejecting or believing, or whatever it may be, or we can focus on the overall goal of becoming like God, and paying the price of the path that leads to that.
Yeah. And so as obviously I know, and then now people know that you weren't baptized right away. You weren't baptized at 8. You didn't technically grow up in the church.
Yeah.
So what was that transition like in regards to like focusing around like the hard, right? Because there's a it's hard to not be a member, right, and not have blessings that we believe come with the ordinances and whatnot that we receive through the
Yeah.
gospel. But there's also still a hard when you do become a member. And so, as a 14-year-old, did you have an idea about that? What that hard was going to be, and what was that reality for you?
Yeah. I mean, I think I had the benefit of, even though I wasn't raised in it, we always went to grandma's house, and
Mm-hmm.
they go and they're religious. And so I knew about the lifestyle, even
Mm-hmm.
though I didn't have it in my own home. But 14, man, that is a molding age. Life, life is being thrown at you in every which
Yeah.
way. And so becoming a member, making that decision, I mean, I'm just in high school.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I was starting playing football, and I was pretty good at it, and start getting interested in girls and things like that. And I think at that teenage stage, in which I joined the church, that was the biggest thing for me, is deciding the kind of future I wanted.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is, you're surrounded by alcohol or drugs and the new interest in girls, and wanting girlfriends and things like that. And 14, those feelings and emotions can get really high and really heightened, and it can really dominate
Yeah.
a lot of the decisions that are made. And in no way did I make the best decisions as a teenager. Um, but it did help put things in perspective for me. And I think from not being baptized to the time I got baptized, the really only thing I was looking towards was a mission. I had really great missionaries who came and helped me and my family and taught us great lessons. And when I got baptized, that was like the only goal I had, was to go on a mission. And that kind of helped me stay away from getting into drugs or drinking or having sex or just being involved in girls in a way that isn't really meant for teenagers.
Yeah.
And I say that because I was in a relationship and we had talked and thought about having sex, but I knew that those decisions weren't going to lead me to where I wanted to be. And that was to serve a mission. And so, yeah, that was really hard to give up a lot of those things, especially because my friend group didn't really change.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was still on the football team,
Yeah.
we were still going to party, like there were still parties being had and
Yeah.
alcohol and drugs around me. And when I chose to become a member, it helped me not get away from that environment, but learn how to live in that environment while not compromising my principles.
Awesome. And so the missionaries, that was a big focus point for you on what made you want to serve a mission?
Yeah, I mean, I was investigating the church for 3 years before I got baptized, so I went through about 24 different missionaries, and not not all missionaries are alike.
Yeah.
But I had some really great ones who weren't just trying to push the church on me or trying to get me baptized, but were just there to listen to me and help me on my own journey
Yeah.
of coming to know if this was real or not. And the impact that those missionaries had in my life in helping me kickstart my testimony
Hmm.
and some good habits really changed me. And like because of the impact that it had on me, I just felt like obviously I can never repay those missionaries or repay God for sending those missionaries to me, but I wanted to try and be that same instrument
Hmm.
in someone else's life. And for some reason, it just had that huge impact on me from a young age. And so, like I said, after I got baptized, that was my
Yeah.
only, I didn't think about college. I didn't think about anything. All I said was like, I want to go and serve a mission.
And with you wanting to serve a mission, was that not any hiccups, I guess, but like was that a constant all until you served a mission? Was there a time where you just didn't know if you even wanted to serve a mission anymore, or were you pretty steadfast in that regard until you went on your mission?
For me, it was yeah, I was steadfast in it. Even to the extent that after my sophomore year, I quit sports. And that kind of goes along with what I was talking about with having a girlfriend and whatnot. Like I was, even though I had gotten baptized, I was resisting, but I was still in that sports world,
Yeah.
teenage. And you can only resist so much the more you put yourself in situations like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I just realized that the path I was on of playing sports and having that girlfriend just wasn't really working out. And so I quit sports and decided to just focus on preparing myself to go on a mission. And that was obviously hard, even though I still had that goal. But yeah, in terms of from being baptized to go on the mission, that goal was unwavering. And it was still hard to get there. I had to
Yeah.
make
Yeah.
sacrifices, had to pay the price. But for me, I was lucky enough that because I was so like glued in on it, that's
Mhm.
really all I was focusing on.
So you had family that were members of the church,
Yeah.
and with the missionaries for the 3 years that you were investigating,
Yeah.
was there like a moment where you're like, oh man, like this is true? Or was it just a lot of little things along the way? Or was there anything that stood out to you in those lessons that really like impacted you?
Yeah, for me, I never really had that big one moment.
Hmm.
It was a lot of gradual moments. I remember so vividly that we were living in this little apartment, two-story apartment or townhome, whatever you want to call it.
Hmm.
And I just remember so vividly missionaries coming over and they would just come over and we would read like maybe 5 verses from the Book of Mormon.
Hmm.
And those moments, like just the warmth and the good feelings that I had, I was just like, man, this has to be true. Like this just cannot be fake.
Yeah.
Um, and it was just a lot of experiences like that of them not necessarily coming over and, preaching some long lesson to me, but honestly being in the scriptures and just like feeling it. And at the time, me and my sister, we were taking those lessons together and we were going to
Hmm.
church together. And being like the times my sister and I would go to church by ourselves and being at the church by ourselves, like I would see the families around and like, yes, it was something that I wanted for myself, but more importantly than that, it just felt right. Like
Yeah.
I come from a divorced family and we bounce back and forth between mom and dad's house and
Hmm.
being at church, it just felt right. Like I just felt wasn't a particular person, it wasn't a particular thing that was said, but just being there physically,
Hmm.
like I just felt like I was at home.
Yeah. Yeah. No, yeah, that's I can see that. Just being going back and forth your whole life between your parents and whatnot, and then probably just feeling that you are at home when you would
Yeah.
go to church. And I like that because, a lot of people, most people don't have that aha moment or like that angels coming down telling you, for a lot of people, for a lot of us, it's little things over time. And then
Yeah.
one day you're like, wait, I do believe in this. Like, where did
Yeah.
that come from? How did I get to that point? And you realize just a bunch of little things over time, then it is usually just like how Elder Bednar says, just a light switch that turns on and
Yeah.
all of a sudden, boom.
Yeah.
So that's cool. So you always knew you wanted to go on a mission because of the missionaries. So you end up going on your mission. And what was that experience like? Was that I don't want to say easy. Obviously, the missions are hard, but was it what you expected? Did you get out of it what you were hoping or anticipated? Um, did you have any hard moments in your mission that you look back on that helped shape even to you today?
Yeah. No, wow. Oh, man. The mission's a hard thing to talk about because there's so many experiences, as you know, so many ups and
Yeah.
downs. Um, but yeah, for me, before I left on the mission, and after I quit sports, so after I quit sports and up until I left on my mission, I was going out with the missionaries a lot,
Mhm.
like going out and visiting people with them down in California. I don't think they do this anymore, which I understand why, but they used to do mini missions.
Yeah,
And
yeah. My sister did one.
yeah, and
Yeah.
so like we went and like lived with missionaries for like a week or two. I don't
Yeah.
remember what it was, but like that was great for me. It was a good eye opener to like a 2 week glimpse at what a missionary does day to day.
Hmm.
And so the mission was still definitely way harder than I expected. Oh, like I don't know. There's just no amount of prep that you can go through
Yeah.
to fully prepare you for that 2 year experience, honestly. Um, but I think the key things for me were all my companions. Like, obviously, I was in Argentina, spent some time in New York as well, and I met a lot of amazing people. I came to love the Argentine people. But there were just times where I had really hard companions and I
Hmm.
had really great companions. And it helped me confirm the truthfulness of Christ because I saw so many different people in different walks of life and how Christ had helped them get to where they're at. And like I realized like as hard as I thought my story was, or as hard as I thought my situation was, or like how awesome I was surrounded by other people that were equally, if not more awesome than I was, and had allowed Christ into their life to change them for the better.
Yeah.
And I mean, specifically, I remember my second to last companion. He was from Uruguay, and he was tough, just in the sense that I feel like a lot of missionaries talk about this or return missionaries, but he didn't want to work. He didn't really
Yeah.
want to be in the mission. He was in his own crisis, just trying to
Hmm.
decide if this was real or not. And having that experience towards the end of my mission was really great for me because he and I had really heart-to-heart conversations about the
Hmm.
church and about the gospel and about the things we were doing as missionaries. And I think that allowed me to reflect on the almost 2 years that I had served and, really take a good inventory of where I was at and what things I was believing as I was preparing to go home. Um, and again, just being able to experience that, I feel like I was able to become more charitable and be able to be more understanding to other people. Whereas before, with my laser focus on preparing for mission, I was like so engulfed in myself, like me, prepare. I want to do this. I want to do this and do this.
Hmm.
But when I got my mission, it really helped me turn outward and just not even outward in the sense of trying to share the gospel with people, but outward in the sense of just getting to know people, know their story and their journey, and help see the potential that's in them.
Yeah, it's awesome that you mentioned about seeing everyone from different paths of life, walks of life, who same situation as you, worse, better, what have you, but we all are where we are because of Christ and the gospel. And it's
Yeah,
funny because I remember talking about some of my story with missionaries, or just really just an environment of living in Southern California around gangs and drugs and whatnot, and um, how um, the building or ward that I initially was growing up when we were separated. We went to a different location because each ward is set by boundaries, and so are gangs, and so it just happened to be that these wards were all clashing with each other because of the um, gangs we
the gangs. Yeah,
associated with as kids, or as in high school, or who we were around, because we all lived in those neighborhoods. And I remember specifically in one area we were sitting in an apartment. It was four missionaries. We were all living together, and they're like, "That's not normal. I've never heard that before." And that's the first time I was like, my LDS experience in high school is a lot different than those in Utah or Idaho, or
hmm,
anywhere else for that matter, because um mine was focused a lot on, like I said, that geographical location, and
yeah,
still having not just to survive outside, but like sometimes at church in
instantly.
those buildings as
Yeah,
well. um but a lot of us still at some point decided to serve a mission, and our walks of life are way different than the companions that we had. But
yeah,
everyone's heart is different. I've had companions who came straight from Africa, and hearing some of their, or not companions, the people I've lived with, missionaries I live with, who hearing some of their stories and what they grew up and what they saw, and you think that you have it hard, and then you realize, like, man, I didn't have it hard like some of these people had it. I remember some areas of my mission, I emailed home to um, my dad, and I remember I was like, "Dad, some of these areas made Compton look like a playground.
like a
Like this
luxury.
is, yeah, there's some ghetto places here,
Yeah,
and lifestyle. It's crazy." But what's awesome is that no matter where we are and what our walks of life are, um, we all have that same goal of eternal family, eternal marriage, and becoming like our Father in heaven.
yeah,
The purpose on why we're even here in the first place. Um, and sometimes we have to remind. I know for me, I have to remind myself. Um, for those who don't know the plan of salvation that the LDS Church believes in, we believe that we lived with our Father before there was a war in heaven, and those who picked God's plan in Jesus Christ were able to come to this earth. And so sometimes I have to remind myself, like, we all picked and we're on the same side at one point.
yeah,
Um, that's our origin story. We all started in that same place and had that same mindset of oneness with our Father. And it's just so happens that some of us were lucky enough to be born into the church. Some of us find it later in life, and some of us don't. Which obviously we have baptisms for those who passed on after. Um, so I'm really glad that you mentioned that, because that's a big focal point that I would like people to remember is, no matter where we are in life, because of the Savior, we can all have that same ultimate goal and success in the end.
yeah.
So I think that's cool, and a cool way to tie into what your favorite doctrine and principle in the church is.
Thanks,
Um,
man.
so you go on your mission. um, Now, for me, I know when I went on my mission, and I talk about this a little bit in my own story. Um, my mission is kind of where I had my faith crisis, and um, you learn a lot more about yourself, about the church, about whatever on the mission. So, did you have anything like that where people like came up to you or looked at you a certain way, and something new that you learned that you had to kind of like overcome yourself, or was it pretty straightforward being in a different country that might not have the same means to information that would be for someone who stays like stateside?
Yeah. No, for me, similar to what you said, is I heard it a lot on the mission. Argentina, most people don't know this, but Argentina is very fair complexion people. Huge European influence.
Okay.
And so I stood out in Argentina just as I do in Idaho and just in
In
Utah.
Utah, yeah.
Um, and so honestly, a lot of the things were Argentines being surprised that I was a black person serving a mission for a white Mormon church.
Okay.
And so that was something that, I mean, I grew up in Corona, California, which not a lot of black people down there either, but
Hmm.
um, didn't get questioned as much.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, on the mission, a lot of people questioned me. And so that was like a big thing for me on the mission is like looking past that. One for myself of like not I want to say this carefully. Like I own and I accept and I love the fact that I am a black member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
Hmm.
But the mission really pushed me to look past just that one fact
Gotcha.
and that like, yes, I am a black member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, but I'm more than just that. And because of that, on the mission, I did have to face, the church's history with blacks in the church,
Yeah.
which that's a whole discussion
I
that
know.
that's a whole rabbit hole that people can go down, and there's a lot of
Yeah.
opinions and a lot of
Yeah.
feelings in that. And so the main point that I'm trying to make is that I think the mission is when I did face the hard truths of some of the bad past of the church and when it comes to race. And coming to terms with, yeah, some things still aren't the best, and race is still a problem, and in the world and just in the church in general. And I'm not saying just to black people; I just mean
Yeah.
race in
Yeah.
general. Um, and the mission really helped me come to terms with that for one, and then two, find my own place and my own feel comfortable, like 100% comfortable. Like the mission was where I decided, like, hey, doesn't matter where I go or where I live or if I stand out or if I'm the minority or the majority, like regardless of the physical or racial circumstances, like I am a child of God,
Hmm.
and that's how God sees me, and that's what's most important. And that was kind of like that was a really big thing for me to just to experience that, and just because you talked about it all the time. Like for one, a lot of people in Argentina thought I was from Colombia. I've never been to Colombia, but apparently there's a lot of dark people in Colombia. And then they found out from the United States and like, whoa, you're black and you're from the United States and you're Mormon. Like that was a daily
Like you got a
conversation.
you got a unicorn in our midst. That's awesome.
Oh man. But anyways, I'm ranting now. So that was one of the biggest things for me that I had to come to terms with and accept. And obviously since being home, I've done a little bit more study and research and just out of curiosity mainly.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, but just to help myself like know like where I stand and
yeah.
what's most important. Like yes, I'm a black member of the church, and yes, there's not a whole ton of us here in the United States. But more important than that is that I'm a child of God, and that's how God sees me. And regardless of my race, just like you were just saying earlier, like we all have the potential to become like him.
Awesome. No, yeah, it's funny because like that was a big focal point for me too. But I don't think I had the mindset of you at the time of yes, this is what I am. I am a black member of the church, and then was able to try and look past that. I think the rest of my mission, it was like very much like my study and focal point was
Hmm.
that.
Was
Um,
that?
yeah, and I but I like what you said in regards to you like still looking into things, but more so for curiosity. And for me, it's more so because I want when someone has a question that has the same issues that I did or come across whatever I did or what have you, that I could be able to provide them my
Help and
viewpoint,
answers.
help
Yeah.
them how I was able to overcome that. And it's funny because I actually had a couple people. I became known in my area for like focusing on that. So I would have missionaries call me and say, "Hey, can you talk to our investigator? Because this is something that they're struggling with." And I was like, "I don't know if I'm ready for that. I'm still trying to do stuff, figure out stuff for myself." Um, but yeah, so it's interesting because I think no matter what, whether you're born into the church or baptized later, as a black member, at some point you're going to come across that, and you're going to hit that crossroad, that fork in the road of, okay, where's my testimony at? What do I believe based off what I've studied and read and whatever so far? And ultimately, that fork in the road will make this decision on where you're going to end up going, whether it's leaving or staying and hoping build God's kingdom. And
Right.
so far, we both have picked the same path, which I hear about sometimes from people. But you know, it's a decision that I've made, and I'm truly comfortable with, and I
Yeah.
don't have any issues with. But I'm always still trying to learn and study and whatnot. So um,
That's up to you, man. And I mean, that just speaks. I just not to interrupt you, but just highlight like you and I facing, and as you mentioned, any black member will face the same crossroads, and just how we've both confronted it and come to terms with it ourselves, and
yeah,
studied, and how you now are in a place and have a platform where you can help other people.
yeah,
And I think that's amazing, to be able to go walk that path, pay those prices, and now be in a place where you feel comfortable, and that you can share your story and help other people get through their own crises and the own prices that they need to pay, because
yeah,
it's gonna come. And
yep.
hats
Can't
off
hide
to you
from it.
for yeah, and it has been. But hats off to you for putting yourself in a place to help. Like that's amazing.
I appreciate that. So you come home from your mission, and so for you with your thoughts in regards to what brought you to focus on your life basically around the idea that we can become like our father, but you have to go through the hard. So you come home for your mission, life doesn't get any easier, right? Like it's
Yeah.
still, you still have hard times and whatnot. So what was life for you like coming home from your mission? Did you see those blessings that we hear about coming home for you or your family, or just like what was that experience like for you?
Yeah. Well, coming home for me was definitely hard. Just figuring out what to do, what I was gonna do with my life, because I'd
Yeah.
focused so much on just getting to the mission. I didn't give 1 ounce of thought of what was gonna happen after the mission. Um, and then also coming home from the mission, shortly, only a couple months after, I found out that my sister had left or was in the process of leaving the church, and that was a faith crisis, if you will, because she and I investigated the church together. We got baptized together. We were going together for years. And then coming home and finding out that the person I did this all with was like no longer believed, like that just
Yeah.
shook me.
I
So I was
didn't
like,
realize that was on you were on your mission when that happened.
no, I had just came home. So
Okay.
my sister was like, she had stopped going
Yeah.
here and there, but she was going through her own faith crisis, honestly.
Hmm.
And she was working through that while I was gone. But when I came home is when she told me she had decided to leave.
Gotcha.
And quite honestly, I didn't handle that all that well. And looking back, I wish I would have handled it better. But and I'm not saying I shunned her or like was ashamed or damned her or anything like that.
Yeah.
I didn't do any of that, obviously.
Yeah.
But I didn't talk to her enough about it and try
Yeah.
to understand her story and her experience. Um, but yeah, that was a huge face crisis for me to just like after serving 2 years and all of a sudden like my closest
Yeah.
family member no longer believes, and I'm like, shoot, like if you don't believe, then what
Yeah.
am
So
I doing?
I got to rethink this thing.
Yeah. Um, and so that was like my first big challenge of being home, of figuring that whole thing out. Like I just served 2 years. What do I do now? And is this still
Yeah.
real for me? And so that was great for me to put into practice the things that I was preaching for 2 years,
Yeah.
of trying to commune with God, studying my scriptures, praying, and trying to find answers. And I say it now as if it's so easy and so simple, like find answers easy. It's
Yeah.
not. It's really not. But I think that's what got me through that experience and the years to come up until now, is sticking true to knowing I'm a child of God, and that as I put that work forward, I'll find the answers that I need and the comfort that I need. And when I say answers, I don't mean that the decision or the answer is clear, but the comfort in knowing that where I'm heading is right.
Yeah.
And the blessings of a mission. I was lucky. I did find someone to marry and found her quickly. And that was honestly one of my goals, not to get married quickly, but one of my it happened, but that wasn't the my goal coming home was that I could feel that I was in a place mature wise that I
Yeah.
felt like I could be worthy enough to marry someone. And I felt like I was, and hence, I mean, I met someone, and Sherry Kay and I, we got married, like I mentioned, within a year of being home. Um, and huge blessing. She's been a huge blessing for me, and especially in the contrast of me not being raised in the church and her being generations deep in the
Oh
church.
yeah.
Like we both bring such different experiences to the table, and with me going through that phase crisis and seeing family leave the church, she was like a rock to me to help reaffirm the truths and the testimonies that I had felt earlier,
Mm.
um, and help me, not that she's brainwashing me in any way, but like help me see that, like, yeah, everything I lived and taught for the past 2 years is true, and
Yeah.
that is for me.
That's awesome. So what I like about that is in your situation, it's almost like your wife held it down for you, right? For your
Yeah,
testimony and that time. And like you said, you found out about your sister shortly after you came home. You got married within a year of you come before a year of you coming home for your mission. So I'm assuming you were still kind of going through that process,
oh
even
yeah,
going through the temple getting married. You're probably
yeah,
still like I'm kind of going through the motions. Yes, I believe, but I'm also still kind of my own faith crisis.
yeah,
Um, and so it's awesome that your wife was able to kind of hold you down and lean into her testimony while you
yeah,
were trying to re-strengthen or refigure out where you were at.
yeah.
So props to her.
Thank you.
And
She's
to
an angel. All women.
yeah, women in the church don't get the props that they need sometimes, and that's awesome that she was able to do that for you and your family. um so you join the church, go on a mission, you come home. And so when you come home, so you didn't really, so would you say your faith crisis of your sister leaving was weighed on you more than anything else that you've had so far in your life up to that point?
Yeah, I think so. I
Yeah.
definitely think so. I think if I had been a member when my parents got divorced, that probably would have been it, but I
Mm,
wasn't. So
yeah.
I just handled that as any kid handles parents getting divorced.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, my sister leaving the church was definitely the hardest thing, just because it knocked so close to home.
Yeah.
Again, because she and I had gone through it together, and seeing that one person that you kind of like, that's what brought my sister and I together,
Yeah.
because before we weren't really close. And the going through the church and getting our own testimonies, that's what brought us together. And so it really just shook me, because I'm like, man, how can this person that I look up to
Yeah.
in every sense of the way, and just life, and in her testimony of the church, now not believe, that shook me. And I'm not, I hope no one misunderstands. I'm not saying I don't look up to my sister.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
look up
Yeah.
to my sister. I meant in the sense of the church,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And luckily now we have a great relationship, and it's because we've had those hard conversations, and
Awesome.
she's shared with me her experiences and her viewpoints and the things with the church that she feels is wrong, and I respect that. And
Yeah.
that's great. That's her path and that's her choice, and I 100% support it. Um, but it definitely shook me,
Yeah.
And as you mentioned, I like that you said going through the motions, because for that first year, it felt like that's exactly what I was doing. I was going through,
Yeah.
and grateful that I had Sherry Kay there to hold me down and slap some sense into me sometimes, and
Yeah.
help me see the answers that were in front of me.
So for someone, because I mean I've had friends who have left. um some of my wife's family members that she's close to have left, but I haven't had someone close like enough where it's like an effect of like you and your sister. So for someone who has gone through that, um I, like I said, I had an anonymous thing on Twitter to kind of get an idea of the ex-Mormon and active member world. And there's a lot of misconceptions, I feel like, from conversations I had to people in my own life, own friends, family, some people on my wife's side, having conversation with them about why they've left, you have with your sister. And I feel like there's a lot of misconceptions on why people leave, and we're very quick to judge on why they leave. And so, from your viewpoint, and you don't have to go to anything in regards to what you and your sister talked about, because I know it's very private and sacred, but like, what would you feel like is a misconception, and how would someone who is a member that has someone close in their life leave the church? How would you give them advice to kind of go through that without being judgmental or thinking the absolute negative reason of, oh, maybe they just wanted to sin, that's why they want to do this anymore? You know what I mean? Like, what would be your advice for people like that?
Yeah. Well, first and foremost, like you said, like we're quick to judge. I think that's one, we're not called to be judges. That we leave that to Christ and let him sort all that out. Um, but also just keeping in perspective that 99% of the time, it's not one experience or one event that happened that all of a sudden was like, I'm leaving the church. I'm done
Yeah.
with this. Like it is events almost like you and I talked about in the beginning, gaining that testimony or little things over the course of time that keep
Yeah.
happening. And then you're like, oh, wow, yeah, this is true. Leaving the church, quite honestly, is more often than not like that same experience.
Yeah.
A negative experience here or there, or comment, or unveiling of the past,
Yeah.
whatever it be, comes to light. And over time, it just builds up to a point where you get to those crossroads
Yeah.
and you do your research and you find whatever it is you find and you decide to go one way.
Yeah.
Um, quite honestly, my advice is to just be patient and loving and supportive and actually talk. That's the biggest thing that I did wrong,
Mm-hmm.
is that I didn't just talk.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of just shut down and I was like, okay, you left the church. And then we just never talked about it. It was just awkward and uncomfortable. And then I'm over here making my own assumptions, making my own judgments in my
Yeah.
mind. And most of them aren't even true.
Yeah.
And when my sister and I finally sat down and talked, I'm just like, oh my goodness, like I should have just talked to you from the start. I'm so sorry.
All these
um,
times of awkwardness whenever the family got together, we wouldn't even
yeah,
need it.
exactly. And so that would be my advice to anyone who has someone close or a friend or family, whatever it may be, person you look up to who leaves the church or is on the fence, like just talk to them about it. And don't come at it in a way to judge or try to correct or teach. Like I'm not, obviously you can always bear testimony, but when someone's struggling like that, really the best thing you can do is just talk to them
Yeah.
and find out where they're at. And then from there, you'll know what's the right thing to say or do. Sometimes it is going to be to invite them or to bear testimony or speak truth. Other times it's just going to be to listen and keep your mouth closed and let them know that you're there for them.
Yeah.
And
Well,
I know that's hard, but I feel like that's the way to go.
yeah. I know I like that because I feel like from what I've seen online, sometimes, and the problem with online is that it's like what came first, the chicken or the egg? It's like all these people who have been on for a while, they're always just arguing, right?
Yeah.
So now at this point, there's not gonna be someone that's gonna just be the adult and try and have a conversation. It's just they're all just gonna be fighting with each other. But in a real life situation when people aren't anonymous and people are actually nicer in person, because 98% of people online have the balls that they do because they are anonymous. Um, but when it comes to being in person, like you said, just like listening, but not just listening to prepare to rebuttal, but
Yeah.
listening to like understand where they're coming from. And like you said, my problem, and my wife will tell you this, is I'm a fixer. So if I hear an issue or she comes across something, I instantly like, oh, I've already gone through that. This is what I've done to overcome that, or that, whether it's church history or even just everyday life or whatever. Um, but sometimes people just need to be heard.
Yeah.
And like you said, sometimes it's not even us responding. Sometimes the spirit won't even tell us to bear testimony. Sometimes just let them know that you listen and
Yeah.
that you care. Um, because the judgments or the assumptions, that's not going to do anything to help. If anything, that's just going to push them away and be more negative. Like with
Yeah.
my own family members and treat me like this, what's people
Then
who don't know me in the church is going to think or assume
exactly.
when I tell them my story or my life or my
Exactly.
background, my path. So I really like that sentiment and that idea, and I think we would do a lot better um as members or people who leave for whatever reason, whether they're come across church history, whether it's a big thing right now for a lot of people leaving, not just in the LGBTQ community, but people who empathize with them, right?
Yeah.
um, or being offended by something maybe a leader said.
Mhm.
All these different, whatever reason it is that people leave, they're on their journey, and
Yeah.
sometimes you need to go through that journey um, to ultimately become what we need to be. I listened
Yeah.
to a podcast that I can't remember the name of the person on top of my head, um, but someone on Twitter actually pointed it out to me, and it was don't let a good faith crisis go to waste.
Mm.
And he had a great. I listened to it twice in a row while taking a shower because of how good it was. I was like, wow, I want to listen to this again because I almost felt I could see myself in the path that he was talking about and how I came out even stronger
Yeah.
to the point where I can say right now, like, I don't know if I can come across anything that'll probably have me, leave or question because of
Yeah.
what I've already gone through, what I've experienced, what I've felt. I can't deny or ignore, some of the things that I felt and gone through.
Yeah.
Um, but everyone needs to go through that. And sometimes people aren't going to come out, stronger or, even come back at all.
Yeah.
I think percentage wise, it's probably very rare that that does happen. But whether that's the case or not, I think what we cannot do is judge, because you're really at that point not giving any opportunity for them to feel like one, they can trust and even talk to you, let
Yeah.
alone talk to anyone in the church ever again because my own family members are treating me this way. Um, so with that, you obviously have your kids now, married, 3 kids, and so if there's anything that you could probably teach them or want them to know, um, what's something that you think you would want to pass along to them in regards to what you've experienced already in your life?
Um, for me, I hope I pass on to my kids. Um, I hope that they love and are more patient than I have been and that I currently am. Um, and that they listen to others. Oh, here's one of them. Hello. Sorry.
Hey, what's up, little man?
Um,
You're good.
and really, I loved what you said. And this, I'll type back in, but you said something that I try to live by, and I feel the same way. Like I have had too many experiences with God and the Holy Spirit and Christ, um, to that I would leave the church. And it's just experiences that are sacred that I can't deny. That I just know for a fact that God is real, Jesus is the Christ, and that He restored His church. And I hope that I can leave on to my kids their own ability to recognize the Holy Ghost in their lives so that they can get the answers directly from Heavenly Father that they need to go through their journey on this life. And if I can do that, if at the end of the day my kids can say, "Hey, my dad helped me recognize the Holy Ghost in my life," then I'll feel like I accomplished everything I needed to. Because ultimately, like I'm their dad and I want to be a light to them, but it's down to them to come to know their Savior and
Yep.
listen to the whisperings of the Spirit. And I feel that Heavenly Father has entrusted them in my life so that I can hopefully be at least part of that experience to them.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that. I think ultimately, like you said, we could teach them everything we want to teach them, but in the end, um, it's gonna be the spirit that's gonna guide them when we're
Yeah.
not here or we're not around them or what have you. So there's only so much that we can do. Ultimately, it'd be the spirit and our Father in heaven and His Son that's gonna guide us in our lives. Um, but with that said, I truly appreciate you coming on and sharing, the story of a kid who took lessons and got baptized and at an age that was life defining.
Yeah.
And being able to have your goal of going on the mission, and even though I'm sure there's roller coasters along the way, you ultimately hit that goal, and then your wife being able to just hold things down for you. And I'm so glad that you were able to have that conversation with your sister, um, and to show that that's what we need to do. Is we're all going to know and come across people in our lives who are going to leave, who have a faith crisis and go a different path than we will. But it's not our job to judge them or assume.
Yeah.
to listen and be there for them in case they do ever want to come back or interested to talk to you. So yeah, thank you so much again for coming on.
Yeah,
Um,
no. Thank you for having me, and thanks for letting me share my thoughts and for the insights you've given me, man. I appreciate you.